I'm Brittany Lewis with Forbes Breaking News. On the Senate floor Tuesday, Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer spoke about the Women's Health Protection Act. The Senate will vote tomorrow on the legislation, which would codify abortion rights into law. He also condemned Minority Leader Mitch McConnell and Senate Republicans for their efforts to ban abortion nationwide. Listen to his whole speech here.
The Majority Leader is recognized.
I understand that there is a bill at the desk that is due for a second reading.
The clerk will read the title of the bill for a second time.
S4164, a bill to prohibit the expenditure of federal funds for the establishment or operation of the Disinformation Governance Board in the Department of Homeland Security.
In order to place the bill on the calendar under the provisions of Rule 14, I would object to further proceeding.
Objection having been heard, the bill will now be placed on the calendar.
Thank you. So, Mr. President, tomorrow, the United States Senate will vote to protect one of the most fundamental freedoms that women have in this country, the freedom to choose whether or not to have an abortion. Few decisions are more personal, few decisions are more private than decisions women make regarding their own pregnancies. Few should be more out of bounds to elected politicians and to the whims of government. But sadly, few rights are in as much peril right now as the fundamental right to choose. If this abominable decision becomes law, women will lose their freedom in so many ways. A giant step backward in the United States, where expanding freedom has always been our goal and our aspiration. Tomorrow's vote will be one of the most important votes we take in this chamber in decades, because for the first time in 50 years, a conservative majority, an extreme conservative majority, on the Supreme Court is on the brink of declaring that women do not have the right to an abortion. They do not have the right to control their own bodies. They do not have the right to health care in the ways that they believe they need. If that happens, tens of millions of women will see their freedoms contract in the blink of an eye. Our children will grow up in a world where they have fewer rights than their parents and grandparents had. America will take a painful and damaging step backward. The American people will be watching the Senate closely tomorrow, and they will not forget how their elected senators voted. I ask my colleagues to think carefully about their vote, to grapple with the impact of a world without Roe, because all of us will have to answer for this vote for the rest of our time in public office. Now, it's worth saying over and over again, last week's draft decision didn't come out of nowhere. It didn't materialize in a vacuum. On the contrary, it is precisely the outcome that extreme Republicans have been working towards for years. Leader McConnell himself has admitted that this was their plan all along. They have worked for years to confirm radical judges plucked right out of the Federalist Society playbook with the express goal to pick away at Roe v. Wade. That's their quote. The radicals on the hard right have passed wave after wave of draconian restrictions at the state level, making abortion nearly impossible to access. One of those laws is about to be upheld by the Supreme Court of the United States. And these radicals have taken on what were once outlandish ideas, like prison time for women and doctors, and abortion bans without exception for rape and incest, and brought them to the forefront. Ideas that were radical and out of hand, they're now talking about freely. And should Roe ultimately be overturned, many of us fear it would be just the start. Over the weekend, Leader McConnell acknowledged where this is ultimately going. Without Roe, proposals for a nationwide ban on abortions are now possible if Republicans retake the Senate. That's what Leader McConnell said this weekend. That's right, a national ban on abortion. Not very long ago, the idea seemed to belong on the extreme of the extremes. Now, the Republican leader himself acknowledges this is on the table. Just a glaring indication of how radicalized the Republican Party has become in recent decades, as the MAGA wing has all but completed its cancerous takeover. All the times that Republicans disguise their hostility to Roe as a matter of states' rights have been exposed for what they are: hypocrisy, a smokescreen, hiding the real objective. It's one of the oldest, most sinister arguments Republicans have used for decades. For MAGA Republicans, this has never been about states' rights. It has always been about getting rid of abortion altogether. The hypocrisies run deeper still. It's worth noting that the very same party that spent years opposing health care by saying, quote, the American people want health care decisions left up to families and doctors. That's what they said as they opposed ACA year after year. They said, again, the American people want health care decisions left up to their families and doctors when it came to ACA, are now the very same radicals who are telling Americans, no, it's not up to your family and your doctor. It's your body, our choice, the radical right's choice, the choice of 5 men on the Supreme Court who are extreme. And now, many on the other side can't even bring themselves to own the horrors they've unleashed. They're trying to convince people they are not extreme, but the truth is that the MAGA wing of the Republican Party is running the show, and their actions prove how extreme they are. Senate Republicans have spent a full week trying to change the subject to anything but Roe, because they know how toxic this issue has become for them. The Republican leader tried to say in vain that the real story of the draft decision was not the end of Roe, but the source of the leaked draft. Tell that to 100 million Americans who will lose their most personal of rights. I'm sure they don't care as much about the leaked draft as about how they can control their own bodies. The chair of the Republican campaign arm, Senator Scott, released laughable talking points, saying Republicans, of course, don't want to imprison doctors, even though his allies, his fellow MAGA Republicans, are pushing for exactly that at the state level. It would all be farcical if it wasn't so bone-chilling, and the consequences were not so serious. Senate Republicans can try and run from their role in securing Roe's extinction, but sooner or later the truth wins out. Without the actions they have taken for years, reproductive rights wouldn't be staring straight into a doomsday scenario. So tomorrow, the vote to protect abortion rights will shine like a floodlight on every member of this chamber. Republicans who pretended disingenuously as if this moment couldn't possibly happen will have to answer to the women of America whose rights are about to be turned back by decades. Tomorrow, there'll be no more hiding. There'll be no more distracting, no more obfuscating, where every member in this chamber stands. Senate Republicans will face a choice. Either vote to protect the rights of women to exercise freedom over their own bodies, or stand with the Supreme Court as 50 years of women's rights are reduced to rubble before our very eyes. The vote tomorrow will tell. Now on Ukraine, the House, later today, the House is set to vote on nearly $40 billion in emergency aid to help Ukraine, as the Ukrainians continue to fight back quite successfully against Russian aggression. This is a large package, but the need is great and time is of the essence. After the House passes the legislation, it is my intention for the Senate to act on it as soon as we can. The President has called on both chambers of Congress to act quickly on the Ukrainian aid package, so act quickly we must. The Ukrainian ambassador will be visiting us at our caucus lunch this afternoon to discuss the upcoming package, and she will let us know how important it is to quickly approve it. Quickly approving this emergency funding is essential to helping the people of Ukraine in their fight against the vicious Putin. It will mean more funding to provide javelins, stingers, howitzers, switchblade unmanned aerial munitions, and other critical equipment. And it will mean more food, supplies, and shelter for the millions of Ukrainian refugees who are in the midst of the largest refugee crisis since the Second World War. We have a moral obligation to stand with our friends in Ukraine. The fight they are in is a struggle between democracy and authoritarianism itself, and we dare not relent or delay swift action to help our friends in need. And make no mistake, the Senate will move swiftly to get an emergency funding package passed and sent to the President's desk. I yield the floor.